since it's important that the motor doesn't fall off the boat. And to keep the motor from falling off the boat, the transom doesn't need to fall off the boat. And the transom is supported by these stringers that I don't yet have in here. And these stringers are braced by this back bulkhead. And the tabbing that I put on this back bulkhead looks a little suspect. There's just not enough of it. And I don't know how much glass I have on it, but I'm going to put a couple more layers of glass on the back bulkhead and improve the tabbing before I even start on these stringers. It needs to be strong. Neat straight tabbing is so much easier when you have neat straight fillets, and empty caulk tube is my tool of choice right here. It makes a beautiful fillet, and depending on how hard you squeeze it, you can get different radiuses. Got a situation. This is the center line of the boat, plus or minus a quarter. I mean, everything's crooked in a boat. And this is the center line of the bolt holes in the engine bracket that I have. I own it, I bought it. That's the one I'm going to use. Unfortunately, it's also the center line of the two main center stringers. So, got a conundrum. I could go ahead and put the stringer in the center where it's supposed to go, where it would be straight, and drill and fill holes with epoxy and put the bolts that are on each end. There's other bolts. Use lag bolts, but I don't really want to do that. I want it through bolted. So I'm going to move the stringer over. It'd be 3 inches off the bolt hole. That'll let me put a stiffener plate there. Unfortunately, it's just not going to line up with the rest of the boat stringers. And I'm not crazy about that, but I don't really think it's going to make any difference. I hope. I'll glass it in well. Now the other stringer, it can line up no problem. That gives me a pretty wide space between these two center stringers, which is good. One, I can put pumps and batteries and stuff down there, have plenty of room. Two, it could make the middle of the transom weaker. However, the engine bracket is a big, huge welded structure, so if it don't move here, and if it don't move here, it ain't gonna move here, because the bracket is way stronger than the transom. So put extra glass on this bulkhead this morning, and it's still sticky, but it's dry enough so I can start messing with templates and cutting out. I think I have enough Coosa board to make it out of Coosa. Otherwise, I'll use the Divinycell and double it up. So I cut my templates and I cut my Coosa board and got some acceptable fits. And now I'm going to go mix up some thickened resin and butter the edges and put it in place and wedge it. And let that cure to hold it in place so I can do some good fillets all the way around. And I'll get the sander and round this edge off. So hopefully I can just lap glass over the top. So this is my quick and dirty template that I used to cut out the two stringers so far, and now I need to redo it to catch this next stringer. And now I'm having a conundrum. Do I put the stringer back where the original one was so it lines up, or do I split this difference and put it about here? I guess structurally wise it's better here. As far as glassing, I probably do a better job if I spread it out a little bit. I don't know. I guess I should put it back where the original one was. And I'm gonna have, forgot about this, I'm gonna have to put one on this outside wall to catch the deck like I did over here. So, first two are in place and they're set with some thickened resin. They're not going anywhere. So I'm gonna take this template apart and make a new one for the next spot. And then the next question is, do I have enough Coosa board? And I don't think I do. I may have to switch back to the Divinycell. So I had enough Coosa board to do both of the last stringers, but I had to splice both of them, which is according to the internet okay to do. So I will mix up some thickened polyester resin and temporarily, well, permanently attach the stringer in place, and I will mix up some epoxy to catch that joint. The total amount of scraps I have from a 4x8 sheet Coosa board. So I did pretty good on utilization efficiency, but I can't wait to throw this in the garbage can because I do not like working with this stuff. With filleting and fairing, I'm using the epoxy paint. I mix it with thickener. I usually don't try to pour out the can, but these cans are almost empty. I usually just use a little scooper cup because it's so messy trying to deal with this stuff. But anyway, I mix it up and I thicken it with about half of the dust that I collect in my sander bag, which is basically ground up this stuff and ground up fiberglass, and about half of the polyfiber. I can get it pretty much any consistency I want. Drawback is it's a slow cure. It's 24 hours before it's sandable. One of the advantages of using epoxy over the polyester is the smell's not quite so overbearing. So once you mix it, there's hardly any smell at all with this particular product. So all the rear stringers are set and they're all epoxy coved into place. And tomorrow morning I have a bunch of sanding to do again. And then we're going to be doing some glassing for the final stringer stage. Yippee! Getting ready to start a marathon sanding session. I need to sand all these fillets on all these back stringers. And hopefully I'll get them all glassed today. That's a big order, but it might happen. Yesterday I sanded up under here, kind of a pain. And I got the glass laid to here, so I may finish this glass also. And I'll cap these up to here. And that's where the next 4-foot sheet of plywood comes. And I'm going to leave these tops square because I might want to add a gusset of some sort going back up to the transom, depending on where the bolt holes fall on the engine bracket. So I can cap those later if I need to, but right now I'll leave them square. So I'm not sanding because I need it smooth. Actually, rough is better than smooth, but bumpy and rough is two different things. This is rough and this is great, but if there's a bump on it like this little thing, then you're going to get an air pocket under the glass, and that's not good. So I'm going to go along and sand, try to get all the bumps off. Like I say, I'm not looking for smooth, but I need it smooth enough for the glass to lay down without air pockets underneath. So the next hour probably won't be very pleasant. Okay, all sanded up and pretty clean. Combination of the fan, the vacuum, and my wife's lawn blower. Got most of the dust out of there. I'm getting ready to wipe it down with acetone and fill up some jugs of resin and just get after it. Boy, that was a workout. Let's see, 2.5 gallons of resin. I got everything I wanted to get except this last cap, because the glass on this side was hard by the time I finished the glass on this side, and I need the glass to be soft to lay it down. So I'll have to wait till it gets hard and sand those Sharpies off and lay that down. Other than that, it went pretty good. The sun started kicking my booty at the end. It's heating up this black Coosa panel, and at first I started mixing less hardener. I was down to 1%, and I still was having the rosin get away from me. I was having to dump it out, so then I went to just mixing half a quart at a time and finished up like that. But it's really too hot in this sun to be doing. So some of this will never be seen again, but I'm cleaning up and sealing and curing the polyester resin with the epoxy paint, and it just makes it look better. last piece of decking is glued and screwed. And if it ever has to come up, it's going to come up in splinters. Because it is put down for keeps. So it's time to start thinking, well, I've been thinking about it. It's time to make up my mind what I'm going to do to close off this back. There was nothing there before. It had two outboards and the transom dipped way down. And in each corner they had a storage box. So I just cut off what I don't think I need. Cut off this piece of trim, which was left on the bottom. And I cut off this corner, which was pretty strong, but it wasn't lining up with anything. And I did the same on the other side. I cut off the rest of the bolted hatch. So now I have straight lines to work with. And I discovered that the transom glass is super tapered with the existing transom. It goes from like an eighth here, it's almost a half there. And that's why when I was putting the Coosa board up, I couldn't get it to touch until I clamped it. So this used to be straight on the outside and tapered on the inside, and now I've clamped it and distorted it, so now it's straight on the inside and tapered on the outside. So I'm gonna have a lot of fairing on the outside to do to get it to look halfway straight, but that's okay. I'm gonna cut a piece of Coosa board to go on top of here to mimic this angle. That's gonna be step one, and I have a Coosa board left over from cutting out the transom. So I've got a little miter gauge up here, and I bent it until I think it looks good. I got nothing to go by. So I'm going to cut the Coosa board at this angle so it'll sit on here and lean this way, and it'll be lower than this because I'll have to have some sort of thickener there to give it some strength. But deep breath, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. This is a piece of African mahogany left over from when I had a wooden boat. This was purchased for a bottom plank, and I guess I didn't need it. This is going to be the cap. This is going to be up top flat ways. The Coosa is going to go this a ways. I just got to cut the Coosa right so I can accept this. And what's really cool about it is it has a bow from one end to the other. I don't think we can see it on the camera, but I can make the cap on the back rise in the middle just a little bit. This is awesome. Just got to make it work. Okay, so the angle, this angle turned out to be 22 degrees. I'm going to cut the bottom at 22 and cut it straight with the edge. And the top I'm going to cut 22, but I got a big arc in it. That's the black line, not the red line. The red line's straight. So, knock on Coosa that it comes out right. My boat's crooked. Can't quite figure out what's going on unless when I cut the top of the transom off, I didn't cut it the same. But the top of the caps are level with each other, and this thing runs uphill, and you don't really see it, but when you put the piece on that it is cut, you see it. So pop the chalk line, I'm going to trim it down, see if that doesn't make it better. Okay, I got it. Good enough fit for thickened epoxy. I like the little curve on top. It's a little bumpy, but I can finish that up with the belt sander after it gets stable. And I like how far it leans toward the front. Don't get confused with the white plastic. That was arbitrary. I just chopped that off. I'll have to build that back. So I think it's good. I'm going to wipe it down with that stone and glue it. So I cut a piece off the end of the plank, and this side fit pretty well. All I had to do was cut the angle on the end. It's about 12 degrees, and round this corner over because the glass is not square on the inside. And I had to file the Coosa a little bit, not a whole lot. So if I put the plank in here, this is going to be a pretty decent fit. This side not so good. I'm going to have to remove a bunch of Coosa board to get this in here. And I'm not sure the best way, or the least itchy way. I don't know. Okay, working on this. Maybe with the oscillating tool. So actually the little oscillating tool worked quite well. Pretty easy. So now I've got a fit on both ends. I just need to measure the length and cut the board with the right angles on both ends. And then I'm going to have to cut the Coosa board down into the arc to match the board, which may be a little bit of a trick. Well, let's see what we can do. So cut my little block in half, and I'll put half on each side. And that should make it easy enough to get a measurement for the overall length. It'll be on the bottom of the board, so long point to long point is 88 3/4. So the plank is precariously jammed between the two little blocks and a strut. It's pretty damn heavy too. So now if I mark the top edge of the plank on the Coosa board, that should be the bottom edge of the plank when it goes into place. So I got way too big a hump in it, but that's okay. The multi-tool cuts it fairly quickly. So let's see if I can get a straight mark up there. So the Coosa board, at least this particular Coosa board, seems to be 3 layers. It seems to be a layer of the black man-made product with just random fiberglass fibers in it, and then about a 1/4 inch in from the edge it seems to be a mat of fiberglass cloth, and then the same on the opposite side. So most of the effort is cutting that cloth. In place, I'm determining the angle that I need to trim the back on, and I'm scribing a line to cut the back off so the back will be flush with the Coosa board transom up top. So I'm priming all the mating surfaces with neat epoxy or unthickened epoxy. It soaks in a little better than the thickened epoxy. And then we'll come back with the thickened epoxy, and that will be the glue up. So when I had a wooden Grand Banks, it was 45 years old, and had it for 14 years. I better replaced maybe 15 or 20 of these planks on the bottom. So you'd be holding them up with, laying on the ground, holding them up with one hand and a foot, and trying to get the hydraulic jack situated, putting in the number 14 screws. Now I can hardly even pick the thing up. It's not that I don't exercise, it's just that, man, as we get older, we lose up our body strength. Well, we lose all strength. So I sold the wooden boat at the right time, and now we do what we can do with what we got. The timber is in place. I started glassing on the bottom corner so I can finish up this corner. Started glassing on the outside, the back. None of that's finished. And I coated it with epoxy paint just to keep the rain from soaking in to the dry wood. And super happy. I don't think it could look any better. I still may cut a curve in it just because I like curves. And the transom is now much stiffer, and a stiffer transom is a longer lasting transom, less likely to get stress cracks from vibration.